It's happening. We're here. It's things are happening. We're hip hop. We're doing it. Everything is awesome. Everything is great. Everything's amazing. And you know what we're doing right now? We're waiting because I need to ask a very important question. And that question is, uh, some call me a woman, others call me a trans man. Pick a side. Pick a side. Um, yeah. We're gonna be finishing Politics of Nature for realsies. I already looked at the the argument for readers in a hurry, and it's literally just a summary of the chapters we've read. It literally is just the argument for readers in a hurry. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to see if I should read that as well, but probably not. Maybe we can, I guess, but we don't really need to. Um, we don't really need to. All right. Well, I see no reason to delay, and so the conclusion. What is it to be done? Political ecology. Uh, uh Ignore that. You didn't see anything. I don't know why that was on there. Was that on yesterday too? It probably wasn't. I probably didn't have it. I don't think I did. I would have noticed, I feel. To offer political ecology a legitimate place, it sufficed to bring the sciences into democracy. Throughout the present book, I have had to propose the solution while using outmoded terms: speech, discussion, constitution, parliament, house, logos, and demos. As I am well aware, I have expressed only one particular viewpoint, one that is not simply European, but French, perhaps even social democratic, or worse still, logocentric. But where has anyone seen a diplomat who did not bear the stigmata of the camp he represents? Who does not put on the livery of the powerful interests that he has chosen to serve and thus to betray? If we have to call upon parliamentarians, it is precisely because there was no vantage point on Sirius from which judges could assign faults to the various parties. Am I therefore limited to my own view, imprisoned in the narrow cell of my own social representations? That depends on what follows. It is true that diplomats do not benefit from the privilege granted by the heaven of ideas, but they are not prisoners of the dark cave either. They are beginning to parley, wherever they are, with the words they have inherited. They present themselves with these formulas to others who have no better ones, no more definitive ones, and who are also leaving the narrow confines where they were born. For a diplomat, the words first do not count, but only those that follow. The first stitch in the common world that their fragile terms are going to make it possible to knit. Everything is negotiable, including the words negotiation and diplomacy, sciences and democracy. Simple white flags waved to the front to suspend hostilities. If I have sometimes offended against good sense, it is because I want to rediscover common sense, the sense of the common. People who speak of nature as if it were an already constituted unity that would make it possible to throw back onto social representations everything that calls for disunion, such people exercise a kingly power, the most important of all, a power superior to all the purple mantles and all the gilded scepters of civil and military authorities. I ask no more of you than one minuscule concession, Since you have granted yourselves the power to define what unites us and what drives us apart, what is rational and what is irrational, show us also the proofs of your legitimacy, the traces of your election, the motivations for your choices, the institutions that permit you to exercise these functions. This the cursus honorum through which you have had to make your way. I don't know what that means. Cursus honorum was a sequence of public offices held by aspiring politicians in ancient Rome. Okay, this doesn't answer my question. Meaning. Uh, course of honors. Okay, so it has to do with the public office. I will put it. Starting from the moment when you agree to redefine public life as the progression of the common world, you can no longer exercise this power under cover of the indisputable laws of nature. If there are laws, there has to be a parliament. No reality without representation. No one is asking you to abandon all power, but simply to exercise it as a power, with all its precautions, its slowness, its procedures, and especially its checks and balances. If it is true that absolute power corrupts absolutely, then the power that made it possible to define the common world under the auspices of nature corrupted you more than any other. Is it not time to free yourselves of that absolutism by rising to the dignity of representatives, each of whom must learn to doubt? The science wars bring us back today to the situation of the religious wars that forced our predecessors in the 17th century to invent the double power of politics and capital S science, while thrusting faith back into the inner self. When each reader of the Bible, in direct contact with his God, could come to reverse the established order in the name of his own interpretation, it spelled the end of public order. There was no more common. That is why our ancestors had to secularize politics and relativize religion, which had become a simple private conviction. Must we carry out the same neutralization? Now that each of us can rise up against public authority with his or her interpretation of nature in the name of direct contact with the facts? Um, no, Estelle. I didn't oversleep. You did. You overslept. So, can we must we carry out the same neutralization now that each of us can rise up against public authority with his or her own interpretation of nature in the name of direct contact with the facts? Can we secularize the sciences as we have secularized religion and make of exact knowledge an opinion that is respectable, to be sure, but private? Must we imagine a state that would guarantee nothing other than the freedom to practice the scientific rights freely without supporting a single one of them? As soon as it is formulated, the solution appears aberrant, since morality and religion have been successfully secularized only thanks to that assurance of an already accomplished unity that capital S science used to hand us on a platter. Agnostic in capital S science and religion both, the secular republic would be emptied of all substance. So far as the common world is concerned, it would rest on the least interesting and most arbitrary of smallest denominators, the king's self. I have sought to explore a different solution. Instead of eliminating the requirements that bear on the constitution of the facts by sending them back to the private sphere, why not, on the contrary, lengthen the list of these requirements? The 17th century solution, the simultaneous invention of indisputable matters of fact and of endless discussion, ultimately didn't offer sufficient guarantees for the construction of the public order, the cosmos. The two most important functions were lost: the capacity to debate the common world, the capacity to reach agreement by closing the discussion, the power to take into account, along with the power to put in order. Even though no pontiff can now say, scientia locura est causa judicia est, the loss of authority turns out to be compensated 100-fold by the possibility of exploring in common what a good fact is, what a legitimate member of the collective is. It's probably not that important, but I will look it up. What scientia locutia est causa judica. Oh, science has spoken. The case is finished. It's a. If we need less capital S science, we need to count much more on the sciences. If we need fewer indisputable facts, we need much more collective experimentation on what is essential and what is accessory. Here, too, I am asking for just a tiny concession. The question of democracy be extended to non humans. But is this not up at bottom what the scientists have always uh, most passionately wanted to defend? To have absolute assurances that facts are not constructed by mere human passions? They believed too quickly that they had reached this goal by the shortcut of matters of fact kept from the outset apart from all public discussion. Can one not obtain, more painfully, more laboriously to be sure, a quite superior guarantee if humans are no longer alone in elaborating their republic, their common thing? I do not claim that politics, once translated into ecology, will be easier. On the contrary, it is going to become more difficult, more demanding, more procedural, indeed, more bureaucratic, and yes, groping. We have never seen the establishment of a state of law a state of law simplified life for those who are used to the conveniences of a police state. Similarly, imagining a state of law of nature, a due process for the discovery of the common world, is not going to make life easier for those who claim to be sitting back to the non existence of the irrational, all the propositions whose looks they do not like. They are going to have to argue and come to terms without skipping any of the steps we have covered in the preceding chapters. But as we have seen many times, by losing nature, public life also loses the principal cause of its paralysis. Freed from transcendences that are inapplicable as they are beneficial, politics breathes more freely. It no longer lives in the shadow of the sword of Damocles, the threat of salvation from elsewhere. Agreement is going to have to be reached. Is the hypothesis I've developed normative or descriptive? I proceeded as though the new Constitution described a state of things that is already in place, lacking only certain adequate terms to become self evident to those best prepared to see it. This was the only way to rejoin common sense. The difference between the descriptive and the normative depends, moreover, on the distinction between facts and values, and thus I could not use it without contradicting myself. There is, in mere description, an overly powerful form of normativity. What is defines the common world, and thus all that must be, the rest having no existence other than the non essential one of secondary qualities. Nothing is more anthropocentric than the inanimism of nature. Against the norm dissimulated in the politics of matters of fact, then, we had to be even more normative. For the rest, there is nothing less utopian than an argument that aims at nothing but putting an end to that utopia. The modernist eschatology that is still expecting its salvation from an objectivity originating elsewhere. I don't know what that means. Definition. Oh, the part of theology concerned the death, judgment, and the final destiny of the soul and of humankind. That's what it means. It is to the topos of the oikos that political ecology invites us to return. We come back home to inhabit the common dwelling without claiming to be radically different from the others. In any event, having arrived much later than the avant-garde, a little earlier than Minerva's owl, intellectual workers can never do much better than to help other intellectuals, their readers, rejoin what the Deimos already brought into the state of things some time ago. Someone will object that it is necessarily a question of a utopia, since power relations will always come to break up the state of law, and opposed to the delicate procedure deployed here, the wordless brutality of the established order. It is true that I have not made use of the resources offered by critical discourse. I have unmasked only one power, that of nature. I had a very powerful reason to do so. Society plays the same role in critical discourse that nature plays in the discourse of the naturalizers. Societas sive natura. I don't know what that means. Societas sive. Oh, so it's literally just society or nature. Okay. To assert that underneath legitimate relationships there are forces invisible to the actors, forces that can be discerned only by specialists in the social sciences, amounts to using the same method for the metaphysics of nature as we use for the cave. It amounts to claiming that there exist primary qualities, society and its power relations, that form the essential furnishings of the social world, and secondary qualities, as deceitful as they are intensely experienced, that cover with their mantle the invisible forces one cannot see without losing heart. If the natural sciences have to be rejected when they employ that dichotomy, then we have to reject the social sciences all the more vigorously when they apply to the collective conceived as a society. The common world has to be composed progressively along with the natural sciences. Let us be careful not to use society to explain the actor's behavior. Like nature, and for the same reason, society finds itself at the end of collective experimentation, not at the beginning, not already made, not already there. It is only good for it to need to take power without ever managing to exercise it, so that it is mistaken about its own strength. The social sciences, economics, sociology, anthropology, history, geography have a much more useful role than that of defining, in the actor's place, and most often against them, the forces that manipulate them without their knowledge. The actors do not know what they are doing, still less the sociologists. What that manipulates the actors is unknown to everyone, including researchers in the social sciences. This is even the reason there is a republic, a common world still to come. We are unaware of the collective consequences of our actions. We are implicated by the risky relations of which the provisional ins and outs have to be the object of a constant representation. The last thing we need is for someone to compose in our stead the world to come. To inquire into what binds us, we can count on the human sciences, offering the actors multiple and rapidly revised versions that allow us to understand the collective experience in which we are all engaged. All the logies, graphies, and nomes then become indispensable if they serve to propose constantly to the collective new versions of what it might be while keeping track of the singularities. With the social sciences, the collective can finally collect itself again. If quite ordinary minds are capable of becoming precise and meticulous scientists, thanks to their laboratory equipment, we can imagine what ordinary citizens might become if they benefited in order to conceive the collective from the equipment of the social sciences. Political ecology marks the golden age of the social sciences, finally freed from modernism. May I keep the expression political ecology to designate that sort of state of war? I'm aware that the connection with the Green parties remain very tenuous, since I've done nothing but criticize the use of nature by showing that it paralyzed the combat of the uh, ecology minded. How can I keep the same term, political ecology, to designate the nature politique of ecologists who claim to bring nature back into politics, designate a public life that has to get over its intoxication with nature? Am I not abusing the term here? If I allowed myself to lack respect for the political philosophy of ecology, it is because it has made very little use up to now of the combined resources of the philosophy of the sciences and comparative anthropology, both of which, as we saw in Chapter 1, require us to give up nature. In contrast, I have not ceased to do justice to the burgeoning practice of those who discover behind every human being proliferating associations of non humans, and whose tangled consequences make the old division between nature and society impossible. What term other than ecology would allow us to welcome non humans into politics? I would be pardoned for shaking up the wisdom of ecology in the hope of ridding it of some of its most flagrant contradictions. To speak of nature without taking another look at the democracy of the sciences did not make much sense. And if we assure ourselves that humans no longer engage in their politics without non-humans, is this not what the green movements have always sought behind awkward formulas involving the protection or the preservation of nature? A delicate question remains. Does political ecology have to inherit the classic political divisions? The parties that lay claim to political ecology, as have often been noted, have trouble telling their left from their right. But left and right depend on the assembly that brings together the parliamentarians, on the organization of the rows, on the form of the amphitheater, on the position of the president, on the podium where the speaker presides. Political ecology is seeking not to choose a place within the old constitution, but to convene a collective in a different assembly, a different arena, a different forum. Left and right will no longer reproduce the old division. No pre-wrapped package will permit the forces of progress and the forces of reaction to confront each other any longer. As if there were a single front of modernization that would make the Enlightenment, secularization, the liberation of morals, the market, the universal, all walk in step. The divisions within the parties have been superior to what unites them for a long time. What is to be done with the left and the right if progress consists in going, as we have seen, from the tangled to the more tangled, from a mix of facts and values to an even more inextricable mix? What if freedom consists in finding oneself not free of a greater number of beings, but attached to an ever increasing number of contradictory propositions? What if fraternity resides not in a front of civilization that would send the others back to barbarity, but in the obligation to work with all the others to build a single common world? What if equality asks us to take responsibility for non humans without knowing in advance what belongs to the category of simple means and what belongs to the kingdom of ends? What if the Republic becomes at once a very old and very new form of the Parliament of Things? For the triage of possible worlds, the left right difference appears very awkward indeed. At the same time, it is unthinkable to come to an agreement by outstripping the opposition through unanimous power, since nature is no longer there to unite us without lifting a finger. I am not too worried about this difficulty. Once assembled with its own furnishing, political ecology will quickly be able to identify the new rifts, the new enemies, the new fronts. There will be time enough then to find labels for them. Most are already right here in front of us. Surprising in the eyes of the old regime, these regroupings will appear banal for the new one. Let us not hurry, in any case, to inherit old divisions. Are there really any solutions, moreover, besides political ecology? Ultimately, what do you want? Can you really say, without blushing, still believing it, the future of the planet consists in a melting away of all cultural differences, in the hope that they will gradually be replaced by a single nature known to universal capital S science? If you are not that bold, then be honest. We have the nerve to admit conversely that you are resigned to the idea that cultures, although inessential, should become as many incommensurable worlds, added mysteriously to a nature that is at once essential and devoid of meaning. And if you do not pursue that goal either, if mononaturalism combined with multiculturalism strikes you as an imposture, you really no longer dare to be modern. If the old form of the future really has no future, then must we not put back on the table the venerable terminology of democracy? Why not try to put an end to the state of nature, the state of war of the sciences? What risk do we run in trying out a politics without nature? The world is young, the sciences are recent, history has barely begun, and as for ecology, it is barely in its infancy. Why should we have finished exploring the institutions of public life? This is a really good book. This is a really good book. How long is this? I forget. It's a few pages. Do you want to read this? Do you want to read this? Want to read this as well? We can. I don't mind. You'll only be doing this for like 30 minutes, so hello, Lisa. Hello. Yeah. We can just do this. We can just do this. This is the summary for readers in a hurry. In the introduction, we'll read this. It might come together um a little bit once I go over this. Yeah. The point that's making one of the um besides a few of his books, it is kind of hard to follow any of his concluding arguments without him explaining himself fully. Um, and I cannot do it justice right now. Otherwise, I would try to. Um, but it's yeah, it's you kind of have to, shocker. You do have to read or at least be there, uh, and listen to the to the arguments being made to understand them. Um, he does kind of expect you to be following along at least. He doesn't usually do stuff like this. He doesn't usually um I think this is the only book where he has a quick summary for readers in a hurry. Uh but we'll go over this real quick since it's only a few pages. Introduction. This book is a work of political philosophy of nature or political epistemology. To ask what we can do with political ecology. It asks what we can do with political ecology. To answer this question, it is not enough to talk about nature and politics. We also have to talk about science. But here's where the shoe pinches. Ecologism cannot be simply the introduction of nature into politics. Since not only the idea of nature, but also the idea of politics by contrast, depends on a certain conception of science. Thus, we have to reconsider three concepts at once: polos, logos, phusis. I don't know how you pronounce that one. I forget. Chapter 1. Why must political ecology let go of nature? Because nature is not a particular sphere of reality, but the result of a political division of a constitution that separates what is objective and indisputable from what is subjective and disputable. To engage in political ecology, then, we must uh, first of all, come out of the cave by distinguishing capital S science and the practical work of the sciences. This distinction allows us to draw another one between the official philosophy of ecologism on the one hand and its burgeoning practice on the other. Whereas ecology is assimilated to questions concerning nature, in practice it focuses on the imbroglios involving sciences, moralities, law, and politics. As a result, ecologism bears not on a crises of nature, but on crises of objectivity. If nature is a particular way of totalizing the members who share the common world instead of in place of politics, we understand easily why ecologism marks the end of nature in politics and why we cannot accept the traditional term nature, which was invented in order to reduce public life to a rump parliament. To be sure, the idea that the Western notion of nature is a historically situated social representation has become a commonplace. We cannot settle for it without maintaining that politics of the cave, since doing so would amount to distancing ourselves still further from the reality of things themselves, left intact in the hands of capital S science. To give political ecology its place, we must then avoid the shoals of representations of nature and accept the risk of metaphysics. Fortunately, for this task, we can profit from the fragile aid of comparative anthropology. Indeed, no culture except that of the West has used nature to organize its political life. Traditional societies do not live in harmony with nature, they are unacquainted with it. Thanks to the sociology of the sciences, the practice of ecologism, to anthropology, we can thus understand that nature is only one of the two houses of a collective instituted to paralyze democracy. The key question of political ecology can now be formulated. Can we find a successor to the collective with two houses, nature and society? Chapter 2. Once nature has been set aside, another question arises: how to bring the collective together, that is, heir to the old nature and the old society. We cannot simply bring objects and subjects together, since the division between nature and society is not made in such a way that we can get beyond it. In order to get ourselves out of these difficulties in composing the collective, we have to consider that the collective is made up of humans and non humans capable of being seated as citizens, provided that we proceed to the apportionment of capabilities. The first kind of division consists in redistributing speech between humans and non humans, while learning to be skeptical of all spokespersons, those who represent humans as well as those who represent non humans. The second apportionment consists in redistributing the capacity to act as a social actor while considering only associations of humans and non humans. It is on these associations and not on nature that ecology must focus. This does not mean that citizens of the collective belong to language or to the social realm, since by a third apportionment, these sectors are also defined by reality and recalcitrance. The set of three apportionments allows us to define the collective as composed of propositions. To convene the collective, we shall thus no longer be interested in nature and society, but only in knowing whether the propositions that compose it are more or less well articulated. The collective finally convened allows a return to civil peace, by redefining politics as the progressive composition of a good common world. Chapter 3. Do we not find the same confusion again with the collective as we did with the abandoned notion of nature, namely premature unification? In order to avoid this risk, we are going to seek a new separation of powers that makes it possible to redifferentiate the collective. It is impossible, of course, to go back to the old separation between facts and values, for that separation has only disadvantages, even though it seems indispensable to public order. To speak about facts amounts to mixing a morality that is impotent in the face of established facts with a hierarchy of priorities that no longer has the right to eliminate any fact. It paralyzes both the sciences and morality. We restore order to these assemblies if we distinguish two other powers: the power to take into account and the power to put in order. The first power is going to retain from facts the requirement of perplexity, and from values the requirement of consultation. The second is going to recuperate from values the requirement of hierarchy, and from the facts the requirement of institution. In place of the impossible distinction between facts and values, we are thus going to have two powers of representation of the collective that are at once distinct and complementary. While the fact value distinction appeared reassuring, it did not allow us to maintain the essential guarantees that the new Constitution requires by inventing the state of law for propositions. By inventing a state of law for propositions. The collective no longer construes itself as a society in a single nature, for it creates a new exteriority defined as the totality of what it has excluded by the power of putting in order, which obliges the power of taking into account to go back to work. The dynamics of the progressive composition of the common world thus differs as much from the politics of humans as from that of nature under the old Constitution. Chapter 4. It now becomes possible to define the skills of the collective, provided that we first avoid the quarrel of the two eco-sciences, which would confuse political ecology with political economics. If economics represents itself as the summing up of the collective, it usurps the functions of political ecology and paralyzes science, morality, and politics simultaneously by imposing a third form of naturalization. But once it has been emptied of its political pretensions, it becomes a profession indispensable to the functions of the new Constitution, and each of its members brings, through the intermediary of individual skill, individual contribution to the furnishing of the houses. The contribution of the sciences is going to be much more important than that of capital S science, and so will bear in all the functions at once: perplexity, consultation, hierarchy, and institution, to which you just add the maintenance of the separation of powers and the scenarization of the whole. The big difference is that the politician's contribution is going to bear on the same six tasks, thus preventing a synergy that was impossible earlier when capital S science was concerned with nature and politics with interests. These functions are going to become all the more realizable in the contribution of the economists, and then that of the moralists will be added, defining a common construction site that takes the place of the impossible political body of the past. Thanks to this new organization, the dynamics of the collective is becoming clear. It rests on the work of the two houses, of which one, the upper house, represents the power to take into account, and the other, the lower house, represents the power to arrange in rank order. Reception by the upper house has nothing to do with the old triage between nature and society. It is based on two investigations. The first undertaken to satisfy the requirement of perplexity, and the other to satisfy the requirement of consultation. If this first assembly has done a good job, it makes reception by the lower house much more difficult, because each proposition has become incommensurable with the common world already collected. And yet, it is here that the investigation into the hierarchies that are compatible among themselves must begin, along with the investigation into the common designation of the enemy, whose exclusion will be instituted by the lower house during an explicit procedure. This succession of stages makes it possible to define a common house, a state of law in the reception of propositions, which finally makes the sciences compatible with democracy. Chapter 5. A collective whose dynamics has just been thus redefined no longer finds itself facing the alternative between a single nature and multiple cultures. It is thus going to have to reopen the question of the number of collectives by exploring the common worlds. but it can begin this exploration only if it abandons the definition of progress. There are, in fact, not one, but two arrows of time. The first one, modernist, goes toward an ever increasing separation between objectivity and subjectivity, and the other, non modern, goes toward ever more intricate attachments. Only the second makes it possible to define the collective by its learning curve, provided that we add to the preceding powers a third power, the power to follow up, which brings up anew the question of the state. The state of political ecology remains to be invented, since it is no longer based on any transcendence, but on the quality of follow up in the collective experimentation. It is on this quality, the art of governing without mastery, that civilization, capable of putting an end to the state of war, depends. But to make peace possible, we still need to benefit from the exercise of diplomacy. The diplomat renews contact with the others, without making further use of the division between mononaturalism and multiculturalism. The success of diplomacy will determine whether the sciences are at war or at peace. And then, in the final thing, the conclusion. Shakespeare, you still here? Conclusion. A. Since politics has always been conducted under the auspices of nature, we have never left the state of nature behind. The Leviathan then remains to be constructed. B. A first style political ecology believed that it was innovating by inserting nature into politics, where in fact it was only exacerbating the paralysis of politics caused by the old nature. C. To give new meaning to political ecology, we need to abandon capital S science in favor of the sciences conceived as a way of socializing non humans. We have to abandon the politics of the cave for politics defined by the progressive composition of the good common world. D. All the institutions that allow for this new political ecology already exist in tentative form in contemporary reality, even if we shall have to redefine the positions of left and right. E. The famous question, what is to be done? There is only one answer: political ecology, provided that we modify the meaning of the term by giving it the experimental metaphysics in keeping with its ambitions. And there we go. We finished it. We finished it. Shakespeare, I don't know if you're still here, but if you're still here, I had a question. And then I can just make it the announcement on stream. So I don't even have to worry. So I don't even have to worry. I'll wait. And because we're waiting, we have to play the wait because we're waiting. But please stay. I'll talk. I'll yap at you guys. Um. So, uh, while we're waiting for Shakespeare to make or not make a response, um, I will say one of two things. Sorry. I will say two things. I will not say one of two things. I will say two. I would say both of the things. I will not say one of them. I will say both of them. Um. Oh, actually, I have three things. So we finished with politics of nature. Um. Amazing. 10 out of 10. You need to give me some time for me to actually have thoughts on this. I don't really right now. I had thoughts towards the beginning, and I was talking a lot towards the beginning because I was kind of familiar with some of the arguments. Latour's not exactly laying out stuff that's entirely new, but there is stuff being added that isn't in his old work. Um, in his older stuff, or not even necessarily his older stuff, just what I've read. And so I kind of don't have a lot to say about it because I'm kind of trying to form my thoughts in a coherent way around them. Um, uh, but you might be asking, we finished Politics of Nature, Envy. What the fuck is next? What's over? Is Latour over? Are we never ever going to read Latour again? Is this the end of Latour as we know it? And I hate to tell you guys, it isn't. It isn't the end of Latour as we know it. Um, but there is going to be a change in how things work. Um, I have a problem because we hate change here. Uh, but I have a problem. Um, it's a problem that some of you, if you've ever interacted with me when I'm reading, may have noticed. And it's that um, I have a hard time figuring out what I should and what I shouldn't talk about. Whether I should add something or whether I shouldn't add something. And so, to improve things, um, when I do these streams, um, we will be choosing a book that I have gone over at least once. That's all it requires, at least once. It doesn't have to be that. We will be going over a book. It will almost certainly be by Latour, um, where I will hope that people join in and ask questions. I'll probably create some sort of I will probably create some sort of channel on Discord for it, on the Discord for it. Um, and it'll be like what the QC does, and it's because I kind of do better with that. And you guys can just ask me questions if you have any confusions. We can talk through it. We can take as long as we like, and we can go as slow as we like. I don't really care. But we will be doing that. Um, and because I actually had that was actually an extra thing. I still have two more things. The second thing is actually a very important thing. If you are interested in the first, there will be a lab life group. It will not be streamed on my channel. It will probably not be posted on my channel, though there probably will be recordings of it. What it will be done though is it almost certainly will be posted on the QC. I will make sure of that. Um, if Brooks likes that, I will make sure of that. We are going to be reading Lab Life, which is Latour's first published book. Um, and that will be every Wednesday, 1 p.m. EST. That's what time it'll be at. Wednesday, 1 p.m. EST. That's the plan. That may change, not sure. And that brings me to my third announcement. Um, as I have announced, there's going to be a 24-hour stream. There's going to be a 24-hour stream. And I'm sure many of you are wondering, well, fucking Envy, when's the 24-hour stream going to be? When's that going to be? Um, the answer is not any time before Wednesday. I'll probably make the announcement. It'll probably be this week, so that's your hint. There's a particular reason, but it's not going to be revealed to you until the day of the stream. Um, but we'll be doing a 24-hour stream. We'll be doing that, and there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Um, there is a reason. But we will be doing a 24-hour stream. We will not be reading. Um, necessarily. We will not necessarily be reading for 24 hours. My voice cannot hold out that long. I am very sorry. That cannot happen. My voice will be destroyed. I already am starting to slur my words, as you can tell. I slur my words. Um, but it will be a 24-hour stream. And I also will probably have already been up for a few hours before the stream starts. So, and by a few hours, I mean like already been up for like 12 hours before the stream starts. At least 12 hours before the stream starts. And so, because of that, I have some plans and I have some stuff. But there's a reason for the stream, which you all will see. Um, there's reasons. I keep them to myself. But it's going to be a fun stream, I think. I think I can make it really fun. Um, and there's actually going to be a rule. Every time I have to make a break, I have to take a break of any kind, I pause the stream. So if I want to go eat, uh, if I want to do that, pause the stream. We freaking or we pause the timer, I guess, because I'll have a timer. I'll have a timer so you guys can see. But during that time, I'll probably try not to be doing that. I'll probably just have some water, have some stuff already uh, prepared and whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna try to get everything as prepared as possible beforehand. Um, but we will be going for about 24 hours. It's gonna be 24 hours, and but yeah, I will probably be slurring my words quite a bit towards the end, but it's all good. Um, not my first time doing something like this. Not on stream. Done it before. Done talking to people for a long time. Kind of used to it. Um, so yeah. So that will be happening. And for a fourth mystery thing, um, I'm sure you all are wondering as well. Those of you who were here for the previous one, Envy, I thought you said we were gonna do more Israel Palestine stuff. We are. Oh no. Okay, what did you guys last hear? What did you guys last hear? I just got the notification. Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. As I was saying, I'm sure you guys are thinking, Envy. I thought we were doing more Israel Palestine stuff. We are. We're waiting for Shakespeare. We probably would have done it yesterday. Um, I wasn't home until late one. Um, I have a secret surprise that I will probably reveal in my 24-hour stream. And I was out all day. And I was out all day. Um, but but also, um, I think that same day or the day before, I kind of forget. Um, I haven't been sleeping very well lately, so days have been blurring a little bit. So forgive me for my uh, inability to remember which days are which. Um, but there was the Brown University shooting. Um, me and Shakespeare were originally on the day the Brown University shooting happened. We're gonna do it. And then me and Shakespeare both listened to it and were kind of keeping watch of it. And um, it was really tragic. And we both wanted to talk about it, and there isn't much to talk about. And so um, we wanted to talk about that as well, even if for a little bit before we got into the Israel Palestine stuff. But there just wasn't enough. And so we were like, one, this is already really depressing, really fucking bumming me out. And we're going to have to go over even more depressing stuff. So it's like, um, it's on hold. Um, uh, Shakespeare obviously has a job. Um, I do not currently, um, but I will probably be getting one soon. But I think within a week, um, hopefully this weekend, um, we can we can cover the Israel Palestine stuff. Um, hoping that, hoping that can happen. Because I really want to. I was I was pleased with what we did uh on the UN report. Um, I was really pleased with that. Um, and so uh, it's not going to be about Gaza. I think in the previous stream, I said it was going to be about Gaza. That is wrong. I didn't have the report. I didn't know which report Shakespeare was talking about at the time. I wasn't certain. It's actually going to be about the West Bank. So it's not going to be about Gaza. It is instead going to be about the West Bank, which obviously is another important thing to talk about. So we got Gaza, we did it, and we're also going to be doing stuff about the West Bank. Um, Hopefully this weekend, I'm going to talk to Shakespeare about it. Maybe we can get it in tomorrow. But Shakespeare obviously has her job that needs to be attending, and so I do not know. But uh, but hopefully, big stuff will be happening soon. Big stuff should hopefully be happening soon. Um, thank you all. Sorry for my little bit of rambling, but uh, that's kind of just what's on the itinerary. Um, oh, before everyone all goes, there is going to be a poll. I'm going to make a poll for what book we should cover next. Um, if people like it, I will probably do more books I feel comfortable with. Um, that aren't just Latour. We will be primarily focusing on Latour, but I'll probably be doing more. I love Latour. Latour is my guy. You guys know this. Uh, I've spent quite a few streams just going over Politics of Nature. Uh, I haven't read that one, Lisa. Someone wasn't taking notes on what the itinerary is going to be. Um, then maybe I should. But but besides becoming pig, um, we're going to be reading some stuff. I'll make an announcement probably tomorrow. It'll probably last about a week. In between that, I might find something to do. I might not. Just really depends. Um. So yeah. So yeah. Big things will be coming out. I hope you're all excited for the 24-hour stream. I don't have that much to prepare for it. I just have to set up a few things to make sure everything can go right. Um, but yeah, but yeah. Um, we'll be shooting for 24 hours. We'll probably have a 15-minute um, A pre-stream period, maybe a little bit less. Um, and so we'll be good. So we'll be good. Anyways, it was lovely reading Politics of Nature with everyone who was able to join. Um, I love this book. Um, um, I'm kind of too out of it to explain why, but it has a specific way of talking about things that I very much appreciate. I think there's probably stuff that could be improved upon. Um, but I am someone who I don't know if you tell. I appreciate what Latour was doing. Um, I really do. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be ending stream now in possibly sleeping. We will see. I should keep sleeping, but um, there will be more stuff. Um, Stuff is complicated for me right now, so that's just all. But things will get sorted. Well, we'll figure things out. Bye bye.